Viewers, before this story carries you off, drop your location and the local time in the comments. It's always wild to see where folks are tuning in from and whether you're hearing this with your first coffee or your last. The pounding comes at dawn. 3 jolts against the Walker family's front door so hard the glass panes rattle like teeth in cold water. Daniel Walker, still half asleep in his flannel robe, grips his coffee mug in midair, wondering if the house is about to collapse. From the hallway, Sarah appears, tying back her dark hair with that look wives give when they've seen this play before. Only this isn't a sitcom. Outside stand 4 men in tactical pants, black boots, and navy shirts that shimmer under the early light cheap polyester knockoff authority. Big white letters scream, HOA Inspector. Historians still argue whether polyester is more offensive to the eyes or the skin, but either way, it doesn't make you law enforcement. Front and center is Greg Morrison, the neighbor whose smug grin could curdle milk. He leans into the chain-latched door like a wolf sniffing dinner. "Step aside, sir. Your wife needs to come with us for questioning." He gestures to the men behind him, their clipboards tucked like rifles, their sunglasses disguising hesitation. Daniel almost laughs. Questioning by the HOA, that's like being subpoenaed by a bowling league. Sarah steps forward, dressed in her gray workout jacket, calm as a lake at dawn. Her voice slices through the theater. "Do you have a warrant?" Greg stumbles, words caught in his throat like a kid who forgot his lines in the school play. She presses polite but edged with steel. "Search warrant. Arrest warrant. Any legal documentation?" One of the crew coughs into his hand. Another stares at his shoes, realizing cosplay hour has gone too far. Greg doubles down, puffing up like a rooster in borrowed feathers. "I don't need paper to keep this neighborhood safe." His hand brushes the butt of a pistol, not standard issue, Daniel notices, but threatening all the same. The air hangs heavy, broken only by the whir of a neighbor's AC and the faint snap of a camera shutter down the street. Someone's watching, capturing history. Sarah doesn't flinch. Her spine lengthens, her shoulders square. She orders Daniel, without looking at him, to call the sheriff's office. 4 armed men impersonating officers on her porch, she says. That's a felony buffet. Greg snarls, "You're making a big mistake." Sarah's reply is ice. "No, Greg. The mistake is yours." At that instant, Daniel senses something deeper. The way Sarah stands, the way her tone holds. Not a bluff, not a plea. Authority radiates off her, the kind you can't fake with shiny polyester. Greg thinks he's orchestrating the intimidation. What he doesn't know is he just stepped into a minefield built by the very woman he's trying to arrest. The domino tips. A neighborhood spat about fences and bylaws has suddenly turned into something far larger, with fake cops at dawn and a sheriff nobody realizes is standing right in the doorway. The neighborhood hadn't always felt like a crime novel in paperback. When Daniel and Sarah first moved into Oakwood Heights, Greg Morrison was the picture of a friendly neighbor. He waved from his driveway, offered to fix a leaky pipe, even introduced them at a barbecue as the model couple. His police cruiser out front gave everyone a sense of safety, though Sarah had once quipped that if Greg's smile got any whiter, the street lamps could retire early. Historians still argue whether suburbia's greatest invention was the white picket fence or the nosy neighbor, but in Oakwood Heights, Greg wanted both titles. The cracks showed when Sarah and Daniel put up a 6-foot iron fence, perfectly legal permits in order. Greg knocked on their door, dark polo fake badge stitched over his chest, asking if they'd consider lowering it for harmony's sake. Harmony in his dictionary meant obeying his line of sight from the kitchen window. When Daniel politely declined the sunshine, neighbor vanished. Soon an envelope appeared, embossed letterhead from a law firm, warning of $500 a day fines for non-compliance. But a quick phone call revealed no record, no case, nothing. A forgery as obvious as a toddler's crayon forgery of the Mona Lisa. Sarah read it once, shook her head, and muttered, "They can't do this." Her certainty was unnerving, like she'd memorized the HOA codebook in her sleep. What followed was a carousel of intimidation, notes tucked under windshield wipers. Outsiders don't understand good neighborhoods. Polite but chilling reminders taped to their door. Neighbors once chatty, now crossing the street, eyes fixed on their shoes. Daniel, a civil engineer, knew how erosion worked. Little by little, pressure wears down even the strongest structure. Greg was applying that same principle, social erosion, drip by drip. Then came the midnight plays. Daniel peered through blinds one evening to see Greg whispering with two strangers gesturing toward the Walker's side yard. Another night, Greg himself arrived with a firm knock, grinning thin as dental floss. Saturday morning safety check. HOA protocol. Daniel asked for proof. Greg tilted his head like a sitcom villain and said, "Refusing inspection sends the wrong message." The gall of it nearly made Daniel laugh. Almost. Sarah wasn't laughing. "It's not an inspection," she said that night, scrolling on her phone with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb. "It's an intimidation stunt. He'll come with his little crew, try to manufacture violations. We'll be ready." She wasn't exaggerating. At 2 a.m., the neighborhood went dark. Power cut silence, thick as wool. Boots on gravel whispers the metallic click of a latch. 4 men in knockoff tactical gear, HOA inspectors stamped across their backs like a bad Etsy purchase. Clipboards, mag lights, and yes, 2 sidearms glinting under starlight. Daniel thought SWAT. Sarah thought otherwise. "Stay here," she told him, her voice the kind that doesn't invite debate. Greg banged the door hard enough to wake the fossils in the Natural History Museum. HOA inspection. "Open up." Sarah walked toward the sound with calm steps, her shadow stretching long across the living room floor. To Daniel, it felt less like she was meeting a neighbor than like she was walking into a boardroom already knowing she had the winning slides. That was the night Greg learned intimidation cuts both ways. And Sarah, though not revealing it yet, was holding far more authority than he could ever fake. By the weekend, Greg had staged his grand finale, a public HOA meeting on the grassy strip outside the Walkers' home. Nearly 30 neighbors gathered folding chairs, squeaking kids tugging at parents' hands while the sun beat down. Greg strutted in wearing his navy polo with the same costume shop badge clipped to his chest, flanked by his clipboard carriers, like he was Caesar returning to Rome. He raised his voice, calling Sarah and Daniel a security hazard, accusing them of suspicious activities. Historians still argue whether paranoia spreads faster through rumor or through PowerPoint, but Greg didn't need slides, just fear. Then Sarah stepped forward. No uniform, no weapon, just presence. She asked Greg for his badge number. A simple request. The crowd shifted. Greg laughed nervously, claiming sensitive information. Sarah clicked her laptop, connected to a projector, scrolling through the official county roster. No, Greg Morrison. The murmurs rose like a wave. She showed a receipt for his fake badge, then camera footage of him snapping photos through their window. Gasps. Whispers. Greg's smirk cracked like old paint. "You don't understand?" he barked, voice pitching. "She's the threat." He jabbed his finger at Sarah, sweat collecting at his temples. His words stumbled into paranoia. "She's dangerous. She's trained. She's—" Then his hand dropped to his hip. Fingers curled around the grip of his pistol. The world slowed. Chairs scraped, neighbors screamed. "Gun," someone shouted. Greg raised the weapon, both hands shaking but determined. Sarah didn't flinch. Her voice cut clean through the panic. "Greg, you just made the worst mistake of your life." She moved like lightning in a storm. A sidestep, a strike to his wrist. Her other hand shoving the barrel skyward. The shot exploded, a thunderclap, cracking across the street. The smell of gunpowder hung sharp. Kids cried out. And before anyone processed it, Greg was face down on the grass. Sarah's knee between his shoulders, his wrists zip-tied behind him. 3 seconds. That was all it took. "Greg Mitchell." Her voice rang out calm as steel. "You are under arrest for impersonating an officer. aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Neighbors who had been silent for weeks erupted in applause, some out of relief, some out of awe. Daniel, standing stunned at the edge of the crowd, finally understood what Sarah had been holding back all along. His wife wasn't just cool under pressure. She was the county sheriff. Deputies swarmed minutes later, hauling Greg to his feet while he spat curses, warning that this goes deeper than you know. Sarah didn't blink. She handed over his pistol, gave instructions to search his house, and reminded Daniel to call in the 2 inspectors who had slipped away. Neighbors gathered close, whispering thanks, shaking her hand. She only said, "It's not over," and she was right. Over the next days, evidence poured in: shell companies, forged letters, links to a real estate scam artist named Victor Hale. Greg wasn't a lone wolf. He was the pawn of a bigger scheme that had already devoured families in other states. But now, with Sarah's evidence, the dominoes toppled fast. Greg's empire of intimidation cracked in broad daylight. The neighborhood reclaimed its peace, and Sarah Walker's secret identity was no longer secret. The funny thing, the 6-foot fence that sparked it all still stood tall. And if fences could talk, this one would say sometimes the boundary you defend isn't just your yard, it's the truth. Evenings in Oakwood Heights slowly softened again. Porch lights glowed without suspicion. Children pedaled their bikes past the Walkers' iron fence without glancing nervously over their shoulders, and neighbors once divided now shared pies and laughter, as though the months of tension had been nothing but a shadow. Sarah taught community safety classes in the high school gym, showing residents how to spot counterfeit authority and how to trust their instincts. She never wore her badge at these events, just jeans, a ball cap, and the calm voice of someone who knew that real power doesn't need to shout. Daniel would watch her, sometimes marveling at the way people leaned in when she spoke. He'd sip his coffee slowly, remembering the pounding at their door that first morning, and the way her shoulders squared, subtle but unshakable. The same house, the same street, yet a completely different silence settled now. Not the heavy hush of intimidation, but the restful quiet of safety regained. One evening, as dusk painted the rooftops in soft lavender light, Sarah sat with Daniel on the porch. She traced the rim of her mug and whispered, "There are always more storms out there, but at least here tonight it's calm." He nodded, the air cool, the cicadas buzzing faintly from the trees. For those listening now, imagine that stillness, the street bathed in twilight, the echo of children's laughter fading into the distance, the fence casting long shadows, but no longer dividing. The lesson of Oakwood Heights lingers gently, that sometimes the strongest protection isn't brick or iron, but the courage to stand tall against a false authority. So breathe deep, settle your shoulders, and let the quiet wrap around you like a blanket. The storm is past. The night is safe.